what you're seeing at the moment right now is the entire agenda that we have. The introduction has been handled by Mrs. Oshida, and my presentation is coming up next, and everything we have is here. So let me quickly go ahead and share what I have to present for the moment. Good. Good. So my presentation is titled Impact of COVID-19 Pandemic on Global Internet Network. And as we all know, from March 2020, we started experiencing a surge in the COVID-19 pandemic with a very high rate of infection. And because of that, a lot of governments started shutting down their nations. And when they started shutting down their nations, eventually what we started having was businesses were closed, very busy roads were being manned by heavily armed security personnel, schools were closed, pretty much everything, including the transportation system. So like the world actually saw a complete close down. And that brought about what we refer to as the new normal. And the new normal simply means using form of communication for our collaboration as well as our interactions. Now, that new normal actually had an effect on online activities or digital activities globally. So we started seeing a surge in the number of people that were using streaming services for watching movies. We started seeing a surge in the number of people that were spending longer hours on social media. Pretty much the only means of communication that we have, apart from those ones we are staying with, was just to use the social media platform to be able to communicate. And so we probably need to compare what we have to the global rise in population. We only had between April 2019 to April 2020 a 1.1% rise in global population. Now let's look at the number of additional internet users that we have. It's about plus 7.1%. And let's again look at the number of active social media users that we have. It's 8.7%. Now, what that simply means is we did not only have an additional internet user or additional internet users onto the internet, rather, we also had some converts that otherwise would not have embraced social media means for communication. But because of the new normal, they had to embrace that. So now, for example, Akamai is a company, it's a global company that deals with internet services globally, providing storage services, cloud services, and what have you. And they said their statistics show that there was an additional internet traffic of 25 to 30%, which is higher than usual. And their internet growth between February and March rose from 3% to 13%. And the peak internet traffic actually rose from 82 terabits per second to 467 terabytes per second. And with this increase in the number of internet traffic that they had, it also came about with an additional increase in the number of attacks, DDoS attack, meaning that it rose between February and March 20%. Additionally, IXPs in Europe had a kind of 30% average increase in internet traffic in March 2020. Milan alone had 40%, which is actually staggering. If we now come back home to Nigeria, March 2020, we recorded a total of, that was a mistake actually, we recorded a total of 126 million to 106 million, meaning an additional 10 million users were actually recorded onto the internet in Nigeria alone. Of course, if you look at it, Lagos was claiming 17 million users. Kano State had 8.3 million users, and Ogun State had 8.03 million users. But of course, this figure was taken on the 14th of July 2020. Now, after that, schools in Nigeria started embracing online means of delivering lectures. Why? Because the schools realized that the government wasn't going to allow schools to reopen that soon. So the only means for them to continue educating our children and some of us actually was to use the social media platform. So like that particular figure that we have, or this particular figure that we have, is bound to actually change. And this graph is actually showing the trend between January to March 2020, and shows the surge in internet users in the United States. We tried to get data of Nigeria. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that. But at least the one in US is enough to tell us the kind of increase in internet users usage that we have globally. Now, what this means is this statistics underscores and emphasizes the need to conserve our expensive and scarce bandwidth by monitoring and optimizing its usage for effective output and achievement of our desired goals. Now, this brings me to the end of my first presentation. I would like to first of all then call on Emmanuel Onowojo, who is going to actually show us how to really conserve this particular bandwidth on the most common devices that we normally use, which is handheld device. So if Emmanuel is available, please go ahead and do your presentation. Thank you very much. We'll take questions and answers at the end of the whole presentation. Thank you. Hello, Secretariat. Hello. Hello?
He's offline. I can't see him here.
Yeah, he's here.
He's back here now. He's back here now.
It's like they placed me in the wrong room before. So let me share my presentation. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. As Malam Tata earlier mentioned, we see that there is a sharp increase in the demand for bandwidth and the idea of work from home. And most person working from home, the reality is that we're all connecting through the limited cellular devices which we have. And as a result of this, you see that most of the time, before you know it, your data is off. So in this section, we're going to be considering ways in which we could conserve the limited data so that we could make efficient use of the data that we got. So most persons actually have become used to Wi-Fi broadband, either in the office or maybe in their place of work and or so. So, but this time of work from home, everybody is forced to use the cellular phone. And you see that in most cases, the 4G is very sweet to use, so to say, because the internet moves fast. You open a page, before you know it, it has opened, you are happy. But at the same time too, you will see that to tell you your subscription has run out. So it's pretty expensive buying data. So in this session, we're looking at ways to conserve those data. We will be focusing on Android, but some of these slide also apply to the hours for those who will be using the hours. So what are the ways of conserving bandwidth? The first one we want to consider is to monitor exactly what we are doing. If you have an Android device, if you open to, sorry, the room is quite dark. Yeah, if you open to setting, you go to your data usage, you will see all the application that you are using and what each application is consuming. So the next question would be, do I need this application? If we don't need the application, it will be better we turn down the application, turn it off so that such application does not exhaust our bandwidth to us. This is a typical example. If you can see my screen, you will see teetering, those who are doing hotspot, he's sharing his mobile data with someone. In this case, he has spent 2.1 gig for that, and you could see Chrome, what Chrome has consumed, what Google Play Store has consumed, as well as other apps. In iOS device, if you go to settings, cellular data, you will be able to see the current trend there as well, each application, what they are consuming. And the sweet thing about Android is that, about iOS is that you can easily turn them off from using the cellular data right there and there. So for instance, if I don't want to download the application that is use my Play Store while using cellular phone, all I just need to do is to turn it off. So this is one of the ways we could conserve bandwidth when we're using a cellular device. Another means of conserving it is to disable some of those features that we don't really need. If you're using apps like Dropbox, Google Photos, immediately you snap pictures, the next thing is that these applications will upload the pictures to the cloud, or Dropbox, we try to synchronize what is in our system folder for the Dropbox and what is on the cloud. And if you notice any difference, you try to sync them, and all this will consume bandwidth. So we want to turn off automatic backup and sync for these devices when we're using the 3G or 4G, if we want to really conserve our data. All you just need to do is go to settings and you go to app, you see, and from right there and there, you could disable all these apps. Then we've become so used to map. Map is one of the great features of technology that technology is giving us today. And sometimes when we travel to cities, we don't know, or right even in our city, we don't know some specific place. The next thing we do is for us to drive to that place using a map. So you can actually use your Wi-Fi network, take a map of where you want to go and download it and place your map to work offline. This way, when you're driving down there, you don't have to use your cellular devices you've already disconnected from your Wi-Fi network, but you will be using from the offline version of the map, which is almost same thing. So long as your location GPS is on, you'll be able to drive around and you still have the same experience. Then you want to also use applications that block adverts, in the sense that you see that just by using the ad blocker, we can save up to 50% of our data. Sometimes when you're browsing, you see this advert popping up here and there. Some of them pop up with pictures just to attract you to click and see what is there. And all these are consuming data. So we want to consume data, want to conserve our data by installing a browser that will be able to conserve our bandwidth or data, so to say. And typically, Firefox is a very good feature, it's a very good browser that can install a plugin and that will block a pop-up. It's difficult to install plugins on Chrome, so we will advise that you use Firefox or any other web browser that you can use for this as well. So, and there is this software called Packets, which you can actually use to download content offline. And when you download content offline with it, you can read them later. So let's say, for instance, now I have access to a Wi-Fi network. All the things I need to do, I could just use the package software to download them, save them offline. Then at my own spare time, maybe when I'm relaxed at home or commuting, I can be using it to read through without necessarily going to the internet. So we may consider using such software in order to conserve this expensive data. Then we could as well disable app updates on our connection, because the Play Store or the Apple Store, you see that from time to time, new application updates are being released. And as they are released, our phone will check, oh, a new version has come out, and the next thing is, let me download the new version. So these are some of the things that our phone will actually do, but we want to turn them off if we must conserve our data on the internet. So you can do that again by going to your settings, going to app, and you can now say auto update app over Wi-Fi only. With this, when your cellular data is on, it will not download update. But when you get to a Wi-Fi location, so long as it's connecting through Wi-Fi, it will be able to as well download the update as well. So these are ways we can do it. Then on iOS, all you just need to do is to go to your setting general, then background app, then you look for all the apps that are running on the background, and you can as well disable them from there, the ones that you don't want to be on as well. So these are things we can all do with our phones. Then there is this web browser called Opera Mini or Opera Max. It saves a whole lot of data, so you may want to consider installing Opera as your browser, especially when you're using cellular data in order to conserve bandwidth. Then there are some other applications that we install that we really enjoy using. The instant messaging app, they consume a whole lot of data. Applications like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, because these days you see that almost every minute someone is tweeting something or placing something on Facebook, updating their status. And before you know it, our phone keeps syncing, uploading pictures, downloading pictures. Unknown to us, we may be thinking that, oh, I'm not using my data. But before you know it, your GSM company sent you a message telling you that your data is running short and your subscription will still go off. So you may want to use the web browser rather than using the app itself when you are using cellular data. So these are ways we could conserve data. For Instagram, just open the app when you want to post something and quickly exit the app. Once you exit the app, then it's not going to sync. But Facebook, you see that it's run on the background. So it's better you just turn off the app and use the web browser if you must check something, because the web version is much more lighter for Facebook. Then on Twitter, you could just go to General, then use app browser instead. This way, the images will not be, and videos will not be automatically play unless you go there and specifically state them to download. So if you want to conserve data, you must have these features enabled on your instant messaging, or if not, you will see that they will be consuming your data. And our goal is to use the data for productivity to do our work. So if our work is not on Twitter or Facebook, then it's better we enable this feature in order to conserve bandwidth. Then on Gmail, we want to disable imaging in our Gmail. You see that most mail these days come with a whole lot of graphics. It looks very pretty, really fine. And some of these images, they are really heavy, a high resolution image. So we want to go there and to our setting image, we want to show disable imaging so that our Facebook does not have to, our Gmail does not have to be downloading images that will consume our data. Then in most instances as well, when you are with friends, maybe their data have run short. As a good Samaritan, you want to share data. But before you know it, your friend say, my friend phone is very fast. And the next thing is that he has one movie on Netflix he wants to just download offline to go and watch later. Then before you know it, you will be using your data to download the movie to watch later. So you may want to set a limit, a warning limit on your, when you're doing tethering, so that when people connect to your phone and they are using it to browse the internet, once it has consumed up to a certain limit, it gives you a warning telling you that, look, you've used up to 2 gig, maybe you have a 3 gig subscription. So at that point, you may consider whether you want to let a friend finish your data, or you want to continue to disable it so that you could conserve your data for some other use. Then there are some background apps apps that run on the background. We want to as well disable such apps so that we will be able to conserve our internet bandwidth. Thank you. Now we'll be progressing, and we'll be joining Mr. Dele, who will be letting us know for enterprise network who may be still going to their offices, how they too can conserve data. Over to you, Mr. Dele.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Let me just the way we're looking at bandwidth optimization on an enterprise network. When I say enterprise network, don't think of big bogus network. Even for those who have small networks all around, you might need at one point or the other to manage what you have. You can't afford to spend all the resources on bandwidth alone. So I will be talking about bandwidth optimization techniques and tools, and I'll be back later to do hands-on on it. When we talk about one bandwidth optimization, we're basically talking about all the tools you need to get the most of what you have on your business wide area network link. Talking about, we're going to be discussing the different methods and products that can accelerate your internet traffic for you, or internet bandwidth for you. You don't have to spend so much on buying costly bandwidth upgrade, especially now that we're doing a lot of stuff remotely, which is the new normal, as we all know. So that is what we'll be looking at. And generally, making the most of your one link has to do with you grooming and reducing the traffic that travels across these expensive internet or uplink WAN connections that you have. You can do this also by avoiding potential source of delays on the network. Generally, WAN accelerators, or what we call optimizers, are sold as pairs or collection of appliances or devices that are intended to sit between the boundary of your network and your actual WAN link. So as you consider the options of what to pick, there are some tools you need to look at, techniques you need to look at and confirm if what you're considering actually supports those techniques, or how they implement those techniques generally. And when we talk about bandwidth optimization techniques, there are so many of them out there, but I will just pick a few of them and talk more on those ones that are widely in use. One of the most widely used bandwidth optimization technique out there is traffic shaping and management. I would explain that in details shortly. Traffic prioritization and grooming is another technique that is widely in use out there. Caching, object caching is also widely in use. Forward error correction, protocol substitution or protocol proxy, hardware compression, compression and symbol dictionaries. These are some of those that are widely in use there. I know the first three rings bell to most of us, while the other four are probably not so much. A lot of people don't pay attention to them, but then our hardware actually supports some of the people who are looking at the other four. Is that The last four probably requires you having pair of equipment, one on one end and the other. So in most cases, when you do VPN connection between those two locations, you can decide to put an optimizer that would do forward error correction or protocol substitution or hardware compression or even symbol dictionaries in it. Let's take a look at traffic shaping and management. Basically, traffic shaping and management is basically the technique of giving speed to or time to latency sensitive packets while you relegate devices that are not time or latency sensitive. What we will say time or latency sensitive packet. In short, you are allowing things that are of highest priority to you to use the network when it is very, very much needed, while other things will use the network when you have spare time or spare capacity to release to them. When traffic shaping is applied to a set of packets, which is usually called a flow, it imposes additional delay on some packets, while it allows some packets to go faster at that point on the network. This is what we generally refer to sometimes as bandwidth throttling. Bandwidth throttling is not just about limiting. Sometimes you just limit everybody blankly. This is also part of bandwidth management in terms of what you do on the network. Throttling involves you doing quite a little bit more. And another thing I talked about just now is traffic prioritization and grooming. Traffic prioritization, you're actually not limiting anything. You give priority to certain set of connections or packets such that they are pushed ahead of the queue so that they get all they need before the other packet or other connections on the network. Traffic prioritization comes in very handy. As you can see in the image I have there, the wall of crowd this network is priority. So it goes ahead of eBay, Amazon, or Google connection, and then all the other connections can come as 3 on it. That's prioritization. You can also decide to do traffic grooming. Traffic grooming is not just about subjecting the traffic to priority, but you can also potentially block unwanted protocols on the network or give them exceedingly low bandwidth on the network. Personally, that's my own idea about such things. Things like P2P traffic that you don't want on your network. Instead of outrightly blocking them, sometimes you can simply just decide to limit the traffic they are using. For example, I can mark all the P2P net traffic on my network and give them just about 10 kbps. So that means there is actually connection end to end there. So he actually still goes through, but it is throttled down so much. And you know how most P2P works these days. If you block one port, they are trying to navigate through other connections. So the potential thing or best thing to do is actually to do traffic grooming. So when you're considering a WAN optimizer, does it support things like traffic grooming and prioritization also? This is one thing you need to look out for. And then the third thing is caching. Caching is internet object caching is temporary storage of internet object, which may include web documents such as web pages, images, another type of web multimedia, just to reduce server lag. A web cache system stores copies of documents passing through it. I believe we all have an idea of what, most of us would have an idea of what web cache, or when you say web proxy, generally as we normally will call it, does on the network. It stores a copy of the document locally so that when people on the network needs that document based on certain conditions that has to be met, that content is delivered to them. This can actually give as much as 40% savings sometimes if properly implemented on your network bandwidth. And what do I mean by that? If you have a 10 meg link, if you implement your web cache properly, you actually could be seeing as much as, if you check, seeing as much as 13 to 14 meg. That's like additional 40% saving on your internet traffic if properly implemented. And you know you actually can apply web cache in two ways. It can be the forward positioning of the system in terms of how you're applying it. That is for the clients that are trying to surf pages on the internet. And you also can use it in the reverse position. That's for servers that are actually trying, that a lot of people are accessing frequently. So instead of everybody eating the server, the cache sitting in front of the server just delivers the pages to people. You might actually not get a single optimizer that would do all these three together, that would do the first one, do the prioritization and do caching, but you can do a combination. There are a few one out there that will combine it and you can actually get it. When we talk about forward error correction, is actually means of data transmission over unreliable, is usually employed when you are doing data transmission over unreliable or noisy communication channel. The idea is that the sender would encode the message in a redundant way, more often using some error correction codes. And all you're trying to do is to avoid retransmission so that receiver actually have ability to correct the error without asking for a retransmission over the network. And that saves you a lot of wastage in terms of your one link most times. In most cases, you require a pair of devices to sit at the end of the one connection. Another one is protocol substitution, aka what we call protocol proxy. You have a lot of chatty protocols going back and forth on your network. Instead of allowing it go like that, and most times they actually don't work well over wide area network. So what happens is that where outright protocol substitution isn't visible, the one optimizer device terminates the protocol connection for things such as CIFS, common internet files system locally, and then substitute another streamlined protocol to encapsulate traffic so that it wouldn't appear for traffic between the pair, either a client and server thing. Protocol substitution also requires you having both pair of equipment on both sides, and so a lot of people don't look in that direction. And hardware compression, you have a lot of hardware, routers, firewall that now supports hardware compression. And hardware compression basically is about analyzing traffic content and replacing longer patterns with shorter strings. And you know what it means generally when you replace longer patterns or longer strings with shorter ones. It actually saves a lot when it comes to the internet bandwidth. Though hardware compression, if not properly implemented, can even become a bottleneck on the network. So one needs to balance that out very well. And a last one here that I'm talking about is symbol dictionaries. You discover that you get arbitrary strings to replace things that are constantly sent over the network. So instead of repeating those long strings continuously, you have two pairs of devices, more like they keep a dictionary of symbols. When a certain pattern is going to be sent continuously on the network, the sender actually sends a code with it, and the receiver puts that code. So whenever he sees that strings, he just decodes it on the other side straight away. And so it just saves you the size of packet or size of things you are sending across the network. Generally, like I said, the first three patterns, the first three techniques are the most ones that are widely used: traffic shaping and management, traffic prioritization, grooming, and caching. Generally, when we talk about bandwidth optimization, we're basically looking at bandwidth throttling, and throttling bandwidth helps you manage link utilization. But then I like to sound this quickly before I leave this part and come back for a practical hands-on. It's not enough to just throttle bandwidth on the network. You need to understand what is causing the excessive usage on the network. It's like treating the symptom rather than treating the cause. But most often, a lot of people just start throttling bandwidth on the network. Yes, it appears to be successful initially, but on the long run, you discover that it would not scale properly. And I'm not saying you shouldn't throttle bandwidth if you have to throttle it, but you just need to, first of all, analyze and know what is happening on your network. Malam Tata will be talking to us later about a network analyzer using NTOP-NG as the protocol that you can actually use to throttle your network and see what is happening on your network. Generally, when I talk about bandwidth throttling, you have to ensure that bandwidth intensive devices such as router and gateways can limit the data transmitted through them over certain periods of time for specific connection, for specific type of traffic. Bandwidth throttling limits congestions on the network and can reduce server instability, especially if you notice that too much traffic hits your server, and then it makes, if you host servers that people have to access remotely, now that everybody is hosting, everybody is working remotely, that means there will be servers or services on your network that a lot of people need to access remotely. So you can decide to throttle down the bandwidth to that server so that the server won't get overwhelmed by traffic. But without understanding if you in traffic going to that server or service, or even what users are doing on your network, and you just blindly just limit it, it can become a problem again to the network. And generally speaking, internet-facing servers. I encourage everybody not just to put their servers at the edge of the network without putting a device that can throttle down bandwidth between them. I've seen a lot of people build network and then they put the server they are hosting that people will be accessing from outside. They put it directly to their can actually expose the server a lot, and then you get traffic that you really don't want on that server. So it's important that you place in your WAN optimizer between your servers and the WAN link. Place it between your network and the WAN link. Don't put your WAN or even organize storage just now to put that takes
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Daly. I'm back to do a second presentation. I'm going to share the slide now. Excellent. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Hello?
I don't know what happened there.
Yes, I can hear you. Malam Tata, continue.
Okay. Okay, my next presentation is actually about ngNOG. Remember, Mr. Daly was talking about monitoring the activities that are going on our network for us to actually know whatever is clogging the network bandwidth. So ngNOG is a very good tool for you to be able to do that on your network. So I'll be presenting using ngNOG. But before I start presenting, I'd like to teach us, first of all, or take us through how to go about installing ngNOG on a Linux operating system, precisely Ubuntu 16.04 version. This is just a little bit of talk about what ngNOG is. I've already talked about that. So for us to start installing ngNOG, we need to go to the terminal window of our Ubuntu system, and we need to have, first of all, update the system. To update the system, you need to be a sudo user, a super user. A super user is just like somebody we call a sudoer. So you usually command sudo apt-get update and sudo apt-get upgrade. The Y switch there is just to, or it's as if you've already answered the question as to you really want to update or you want to upgrade without having to do that with a prompt. After you've done that, there will be a need for you to probably restart your system. And the next step is for you to, after upgrading the system, you get the latest version of the ngNOG system when you start installing. So use as a sudo user again, you still go about using the sudo apt-get install ngNOG. So sudo apt-get is for installing applications, and you specify the name of the application you want to install, which is ngNOG. Then after installation, there's a need for you to configure the ngNOG so as to be able to capture traffic effectively for you and for you to be able to access the ngNOG web interface. And for you to do that, notice I have some places circled in red. The first circle in red, after when you issue the command sudo nano etc ngNOG.conf, for you to be able to edit using the nano editor to edit your ngNOG configuration file. The places that are circled there, the first one is where you specify the actual interface that is going to be listening on. So nTop is going to use that particular interface to listen on. Depending on your interface, what kind of interface that you have, whether you have an Ethernet interface, a gigabit port, a fast Ethernet interface, whatever it is. Of course, you know what interface you are running, so you can actually specify that particular interface there. So all you need to do is just edit it. That I is equal to ETH0 will now be replaced by what? ETH0 will now be replaced by whatever interface you're running, you want to use to run nTop. And again, nTop uses a particular port number. The default port number it uses is 3000. Of course, you can change the port number. The port number is what you're going to attach to the URL by the time you want to view your nTop interface on your web browser. So that done, after that, you now have to come back and restart the nTop service itself. Now, after installing nTop, it runs as a service. It runs in the background of the system. So it's actually not a service. So for you to be able to restart the service, you just use the system control restart command, and it restarts the nTop engine. Of course, you do that as a sudo user. Now, by the time you do that, you might need to actually open up that particular port, because you know Linux system, most of the ports are actually closed until you allow the ports to open. That gives Linux system one of the security features that it actually enjoys. So for you to be able to use that particular port, you need to make that particular port available, meaning that it can be used. So how do you make it available? You use the UFW allow, and you specify the port number. The port number that you are using is actually 3000. So you use that, you allow that particular port number as a sudo user. Then after that, you open up your favorite web browser. Any of the web browsers can actually do. You issue the command, their server IP. Of course, for some of us that have DNS running on our network, we might not have to use the server IP. You probably have to give a qualified domain name. But then if you don't have this DNS and you have your nTop installed on a machine using an IP address, fine and good, you can actually use that particular IP address with a switch, with a column, and followed by the port number. So with that, it gives you the web interface. And of course, by default, nTop uses the first user being the first username being admin and the password of admin. You can actually change that, and that is where we're going to right now. We'll stop sharing this so that I can now bring up the nTop window itself. Just a moment. Now, what you're seeing here is the nTop window. So you can see after I've been able to enter the IP address 197.210.252, blah blah blah, and I have the switch. The port number attached to it, 3000. I can now come and enter the username admin and the password of admin. So what you see is actually the dashboard. So on the dashboard, you will notice what you're seeing actually are the nodes that are actually communication. So you see all the flows. The different colors that you're seeing are the different flows that are actually for the different communication, the different traffic that are actually flowing between one host and the other. So now you notice that it's actually dynamic in the sense that it doesn't stay. So you can actually capture it, you can stop it so that if you see something interesting, you can actually stop it using this, and it stops, and you can actually view what is actually happening, and you can go back and allow it to continue. So that's just about that on the dashboard. Then of course, the longer this particular stick that you're seeing, the colored sticks that by the size that you're seeing, it means that the higher the activities of the host. So you can see this particular host, which is called ngNOG, is actually the most active on this particular network segment, and all of these hosts are actually communicating with that particular host, and you can see all of the flows going on. Then beyond that, we can actually narrow it down to a host. Let's go to the host and see. So you can see when you look at the host, you can see the top host that is actually communicating. The host that's actually the top host that's communicating is actually 197.210.252.38, which is actually the top NG server, and others are actually only occupying 0.8%. That is just as a result of the fact that I have just created a small segment of our network to be able to do this demonstration. I'm not doing it on the actual network of the university where I belong to. So like what you're seeing is actually the NTOP device that is actually occupying about 99.1% of the entire of the traffic that is being sent and received on the network. And if you move on, you can actually also come down here and see what is happening on each interface, on the interface itself. So the ingress traffic and the egress traffic, you can see that. So remote to local and local to remote, that's ingress and egress traffic that's actually taking place. And of course, if you come down here, you will see the uptime. It's meaning that this server has been on for 5 hours, 16 minutes, and 51 seconds. One very important part of this NTOP is where you specify users. Perhaps we need to visit that. When you look at up here where my cursor is, where we have a kind of wheel sign or symbol, you will notice there's, when I click on that, you notice there's manage user and a lot of other preferences. When you look at manage user, when you click on manage user, you can see the default user, which is the NTOP administrator admin, being a member of the admin group. So you can actually edit that particular user. You can even add additional user. Once you want to add, once you click on add additional user, it gives you an interface where you create a user, give the name of the user, get the password of the user. So you can actually delegate roles to different users for them to be able to monitor different segments of the network. Beyond that, also, there's where we specify the preferences. The preferences, various preferences are here. In what way do you want to look at your throughput, whether you want to use the byte or the packet as your SI unit for being, and a lot of other things that you can actually play around here on the preferences. And you can actually export the data as well. So eventually, if you want to export data that has been gathered on your NTOP, you can actually export it onto another, probably an Excel sheet or a CSV file, so as to view and decide whatever you want to do. Now, let's go back to the flow. Now, on the flow, notice what is happening. Here on the flow, you can see the various transmissions that are going in, various communications that are going in between the client and the server. Who is the client? The client are users that actually use up the services. The server are the ones that are actually providing the service on the network. And it tells you what each of these clients are actually using, or the actual throughput that they're using. So for instance, this particular client is actually using about 182.35 bits per second. Some of these actually have elapsed, meaning that they have expired. These are some of the flows that are actually, remember I told you, NTOP is actually active in such a way that traffic that are moving, it captures whatever is happening in real time on your network. So that is just about that. That's the reason why you notice that everything changes intermittently. So we have here all the applications. Some of them are known, some of them are unknown. So we have the HTTPS traffic going on. Like I told you, this is a specially created segment of the network. So you notice that there's not much really happening on that. I didn't put that on the main network. And it shows you the duration of this particular communication or what have you. And if you want additional info on the traffic, you just click on that and it shows. Now, you can see what I told you. I told you that if it has expired, it shows that that particular flow has actually expired. So we can go back and continue what we're doing. Let's go back to the flow. Okay, that's done. So we can see the IP address of the various clients that we are communicating with our server, and even the port number that they're using, and that the layer 4 protocol that they're actually using. So when we go to the host, for instance, you can now narrow it down to each host. Now you can actually access hosts also from the flows by clicking on the IP address on the previous screen that we have. So now when you look at the IP, you can see that various IP addresses that are actually communicating on our network. All of them are here. And to a large extent, you can even see the operating system that the systems are actually using. So the host, you can see the operations, like for instance, it shows that this is actually using an Apple system. This IP address is actually using a Windows machine, and you pretty much see a lot of information about each of the hosts and how long they've been on the network, and the throughput that they are pulling, and the traffic itself, the overall traffic that they have. You'll see everything here. And with this, you'll be able to decide what is actually happening, who's actually clogging my network. So if you see a host that you are not familiar with and you are not comfortable about, they are pulling up the large chunk of your bandwidth, that is where you flag that particular host, or probably flag that particular protocol, and decide on whatever you want to do using this bandwidth throttling that Mr. Bamidele Amiri was talking about. And we can go to network as well and MAC address. You can view various other things. And remember, I talked to you about the interface that you're using. Remember when we were configuring the interfaces in the preference window, the interface that you saw was actually ETH0 during installation. We use ETH0 as the interface. But then you can notice that the interface that is actually on this particular server is actually labeled as ENP1 S0. So of course, this when you were doing the installation, this was what was specified. That's the reason why it's capturing flow or network traffic on that particular interface. So that's that. And if you want to get additional information on a particular host, probably this host, let's look at what's happening here. So you can see this is the MAC address of the computer itself. This is the IP address that the computer has. It's running an Intel Mac OS X, and the name is ngNOG, and this is the first time that it started capturing traffic. We started communicating, and this is the number of hours it has actually used so far. And you can see a timeline here, something like a graph showing you how much traffic it has sent, and the ratio of sent traffic and received traffic. And here is also telling you the traffic sent and received in terms of megabytes. And here is showing you in terms of packets, actually. So like you pretty much see a lot of the things that's happening on the network. And here shows you the activity map as well. So in the activity map, you see how busy that particular host is, and you can now decide whether or not that host should be that busy. If you feel that the host is not supposed to be as busy as that, you can now decide to flag that particular host and to apply whatever security feature you want to apply onto it, and that's that about that. I believe that is pretty much about what we have to give you on, let's go to protocol first before we move on. And so this is okay. Now you can see on the protocol, so you can see there's somebody was doing BitTorrent somehow. And so this is something that you can actually flag. If you want BitTorrent to be running on the network, you can actually flag that. Somebody was using whois database. Somebody, there's an open VPN that is running on the net that ran on the network sometime ago. You can see it's actually not doing anything at the moment. It's just 0. And there's a time server, ICMP, pretty much all the protocols that are actually playing about in the network. You see all of these, and it tells you what you are actually doing on the network. And you can see from here as well what has been shown here in a graphical sense. So you can see HTTP traffic is taking up 63% of your traffic. Ubuntu One is taking 35.0% of the traffic, and others are just taking 1.9%. And pretty much that's it. And I hope people will take these and probably explore more, so that they can now use NTOP as their monitoring device. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. I will now call on Mr. Bamidele Amiri to be able to give us practical steps to bandwidth optimization. So, Mr. Bamidele, you are on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Tata. I would like to just share my screen and continue from where I stopped the last time. Right now, thank you for the bit that Thank you for the bit there. So you have actually dealt with an open source network sniffer or analyzer that everybody can easily deploy on their network. And there are some open source optimizers also, though I've not really explored them to a very large extent. OpenNOP is one that you actually can check out. Because it's an open source thing, community based, one thing I look out for is that how wide or how large is the community base, what the level of support is getting out there. So I discovered that it's fair out there. A lot of people are probably using it. And then you can also consider some price-friendly network optimizer. One that readily comes to mind is MikroTik. I know a lot of people have it in small sizes, in big sizes in their network. Some even just have some very small devices there. No matter how big or small the one you have is, the configuration across them is actually the same. The only thing I will encourage is scale it to size with your network. Don't use a very small device that has 16 MB RAM to want to carry to handle your network traffic that is about almost 155 meg STM1 link. Even Cisco routers these days, you get Cisco router to do some of the basics optimizing stuff for you like that without spending so much on licenses, depending on how many users or what you want to achieve on it. Cisco devices comes in different forms and chips that will serve that for you. Allotnet Enforcer, I know a lot of people that are using that on the edge of their network for optimizing, for filtering, for bandwidth limit and stuff like that. Sonic War is another thing. And then I have a lot of people using FatPipe WAN optimizers on their networks for blocking, even for blocking web pages, for aggregating traffic, for controlling what goes through and what will not come in. So basically, I will be focusing more on MikroTik for now, because I know a lot of people out there have it. It's not enough to just have it in there. You can actually do quite a lot with it. The MikroTik actually uses Q and Mango to achieve traffic shaping, prioritization, grooming, and even throttling of bandwidth if you want to do it, depending on how you want to do it. Personally, I prefer Linux-based Squid cache as my internet object object caching, though MikroTik also supports web proxy, so you can do web proxy on your MikroTik boxes. Lots of routers out there support hardware compression, including MikroTik also. You just need to go to IP packing and then you can actually enable hardware compression on it. But then, like I said, if not properly implemented, it can become a bottleneck on your network. So let's just quickly look at how MikroTik implements basic traffic shaping and prioritization, throttling of bandwidth, and how you want to use it. Simple queue, MikroTik uses simple queue, and you can use simple queue to just limit bandwidth to a specific IP address or to a subnet. You actually can also use it to implement QoS on your network, mark specific traffic, give it higher priority, and give less priority to the other thing on your network. You can also use Mango with Q3. That's slightly more advanced than simple queue, but it gets the job done for you without so much stress. And let's just take a look at, if you're doing simple queue quickly, if you're doing bandwidth control using simple queue, you can simply just go to queues from the main menu of your router and click on the queue. Once you click on queue, it brings up a table where you can click simple. And then once you add, for example, what I have, the screenshot I have now, create bandwidth limit for a particular IP address, 88.45. I set the limit, maximum limit, which we call MIR, maximum information rate. That means in the best case situation, this particular user would do just 768 kbps by 3 meg. And then I leave priority every other thing as default. Make sure you leave queue type as Ethernet default when you are creating this kind of simple queue. Then apply and OK. That means the user is going to be restricted. Remember, your bandwidth manager or optimizer has to be placed in line between the network and the WAN connection. You don't place it offline. If the traffic is not passing through the optimizer, it will not do anything meaningful in terms of optimizing network or doing bandwidth shaping or prioritization on your network. This is just simple way of applying bandwidth limits on a network using MikroTik router. You can also decide to do what we call traffic shaping. I can decide to set, for example, if you look at this series, I have assumed that I've added 3 different queues, one for 88.45, one for 202, And then for others, you notice that I have the IP address 88.45. It takes its own 768 by 3 meg. Then the next address takes 3 meg by 12 meg. Every other person, notice that the subnet, the network address was used there. Every other user on the network is restricted to 384K by 684K. The order of arrangement matters in MikroTik queues. If you bring the last queue here, the one with .0/24, if you pull it up, that means everybody, even the 88.45 and 88.202 will no longer be able to get what you have assigned to them. So the order of arrangement of your queue, as far as simple queue is concerned, is very, very important. You also can go a step further. You can decide to set what we call CIR, MIR. You can use bus table limits. If you want users on your network to have very good experience on the network, for example, this particular user, I know I can afford to give him 4 meg, but I don't want him to hold on to the 4 meg bandwidth. I set his maximum bandwidth to 2 meg by 2 meg, put the bus table limit to 4 meg by 4 meg, and then the bus threshold. The threshold is actually what would trigger the bus limit. He will not be able to hold on to more than 2 meg continuously. But when he needs it, when he's surfing the net, he can go as much as 4 meg by 4 meg. And then he uses the bus time to calculate average over a particular time for it to determine if the user can actually go beyond his max limit. Like I said, max limit here is MIR, maximum information rate. That means that's the maximum you can hold on to continuously. You also can set your queue based on time. If I want this user to enjoy this from Monday to Friday and not Saturday and Sunday, that means I'll simply just uncheck Sunday and Saturday here and leave just Monday through Friday only as active. This is setting bus table limits. You also can do quite a lot with simple queue. You can decide to set traffic prioritization, time-based limit, like I said just now, bus table limit. And then because they are simple to configure, these are some of the advantages of simple queue. The major cons there is that each packet is actually checked against every queue. So if you use a small router to handle a very large network, it can become a bottleneck because the router will get overwhelmed. And when I say a small router, it means in terms of processor speed, in terms of memory. Don't get an HAP Lite, for those who are conversant with MikroTik, to serve a network that has 45 meg traffic, or get a 951 to serve a network that has 155 meg traffic. You are just simply going to create another trouble for that network. Get the right appliance for that network if you're going to do. And if you cannot afford the appliance, get a system, a small old used system in your office that is like a Core i3 or any other system that has at least 1.2 gigahertz processor speed. Put at least 1 gig RAM in it and install the OS in it. The cost of the license, I believe, is bearable for a lot of people compared to some other vendors' product out there. You also can decide to do traffic shaping on your network. And when I say traffic prioritization and shaping, I can actually mark specific traffic going to specific servers. And then the way to do that is you mark every connection based on attributes that you can define. For example, if I'm going to mark all HTTP traffic and voice traffic, I want to give the voice traffic priority over HTTP. Then I mark all voice connection, mark all HTTP connection, and then I mark the packet going over them. I will have something that looks like this. Then I can now go back to my simple queue and apply the queue, the packet mark on the simple queue just to limit it. You can also use it with queue tree. Like I said earlier, queue trees are simpler, easier for the router to handle, but they are much more difficult to configure. So for an average user, you can stick to using your simple queue and you still get the best out of your network. Just learn to integrate the simple queue with some other little things like Mangle and packet marks in there. I decided to give a few other examples of what you can actually still achieve with your MikroTik simple queues. You can actually prioritize specific protocol, service, or application over the network. If you have been able to use your NTOP to analyze and see what is really heating up your bandwidth on your network, you actually can come back to your MikroTik and then define that protocol under Mangle, and then mark the connection, mark the packet over that connection, and then mark all other packets. You see, you can't tell a packet that it has priority if you cannot see the other type of connection that it has priority over. So you have to, as much as you are marking what you want to give priority, you must also mark those things that you want to give lower priority to. And these are just some screenshots of how to implement some of those things. And also you can use your simple queue. If you have a large network, an office where everybody should get the same thing, you can use just one queue for many instead of having to set one simple queue for each address. You can just add one simple queue and it will limit each user on the network to a particular bandwidth. You also can decide to use your simple queue to equalize bandwidth such that if I'm the only one on the network, for example, if I stay late in the office, because you have added a queue for me on the optimizer or on the MikroTik, should not limit me to that bandwidth in the night when I'm the only one on the network. If you have 10 meg, I should be able to use all the 10 meg at night. So you can actually use your MikroTik device to equalize bandwidth such that if I'm the only one, I should use up everything. If we become 2 on the network, we should share what is there equally. And if we become 10 on the network, let's share what is there equally. To implement that, you just need to play around with queue types. And under queue types, you see that there are 2 specific queues there. You see PCQ download default, PCQ upload default. For example, on that network, the network I just described, if I have 10 meg, I can actually set each user to 512K by 512K. That means for PCQ download default, I'll put the limit, the rate there as 512K. For upload default, I'll also put the rate as 512. Notice the classifiers on the 2. The classifier for download is destination address. Classifier for upload is source address. Then I'll go back to the simple queue. That's my total bandwidth there. That's my entire network address. My total bandwidth is 10 meg by 10 meg. So I'll simply go to the advanced tab, change the queue type to PCQ upload default for target upload, change the download, target download to PCQ download default. Remember that you also can set burst table limit here. If you want each user to still be able to burst, you actually can set the burst there, and that makes life easier in terms of surfing the internet, doing the HTTP, web browsing, and stuff like that. Burst table limits are very good when you consider browsing, giving user very pleasant experience as far as surfing the internet is also concerned. If you decide to do the equalizing, the major difference there is that you don't set any limit under the PCQ. You leave the rate as 0 and 0 for upload, 0 for download, but you remember to set your total bandwidth under the max limit using your block of IP address. And when you apply, if you use the rate as 0 under the PCQ, that means if I'm the only one on the network, I'll use the entire 10 meg. If we become 2, we share it 5 meg by 5 meg. If we become 10, then we share it 250, we share it in the same proportion equally. Nobody monopolizes the network at any point in time. This is for people who are just basically accessing resources outside their network. There's nothing on their network for people to access. So everybody gets fair share of what is happening, of what is available. No single device. If you like on your own device, decide to start up all the traffic in the world, open connections to all servers in the world. Once I implement this, then you are restricted to whatsoever is allocated to you at that point in time. And that just gives users experience, improves users' experience on the network. As I mentioned earlier that you actually can use your MikroTik for web proxy also, but I always like sounding this. Anytime you enable internet object caching on your network, either using Squid or using web proxy or using any other proxy server for that matter, it's important to protect that proxy server. It's one of the easiest things that users on the internet or people on the internet can easily exploit on your network. They would crash your network because people will start using you as free open web proxy out there. But to enable web proxy on MikroTik is actually very easy. You simply go to IP from the main menu and then you click on web proxy. 2 things to tick there. You just need to tick enable and then tick cache on disk. You actually can use the web proxy on MikroTik for 2 things. You can use it for HTTP filtering, HTTP or FTP filtering, and then you can also use it as proxy server. You can decide to cache on disk if you want to cache on disk there. If you don't want to cache on disk, that means you are basically using for HTTP and FTP filtering. And once you tick these 2 and you enable, but remember, if you're going to use your MikroTik for web proxy, you want to use it for caching, that means you must have enough disk space on the device. That means you cannot just pick any MikroTik on the shelf, like picking your HAP Lite or picking your 951. It's better you install the MikroTik OS on the PC that has enough storage to keep cache, or you get some specific types of MikroTik router out there. I really don't want to go into details of various hardware that are available out there, the ones that have enough capacity to store web cache. So once you get that in place and then you can enable this, believe it, it's going to improve users' experience on the network, especially as far as HTTP traffic and FTP traffic are concerned on the network. Yes, you won't be able to save cache HTTPS traffic for obvious reasons because of security and stuff like that. But at least for HTTP traffic going through the network, you would really, really experience and have better experience on the network. Generally, I would like to close on this note. For every network or IT manager in your place of work, believe it, it is very, very profitable to put a WAN optimizer in your network that has one or two of these techniques, that can use one of these techniques that has at least more than one of these techniques, capability to support at least two of these techniques in your network. It will greatly improve the throughput and minimize latency across your network. And once you get that, you discover that the savings and the gain is far better than pushing your organization to just increasing their bandwidth arbitrarily. The recurrent cost of keeping a high bandwidth or a high capacity internet traffic, and the cost of bringing in an optimizer or any bandwidth controller or shaper into your network, the cost of getting additional bandwidth completely outweighs it, and the gains of putting an optimizer is far, 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 far better. Thank you so much for listening. And I believe Ima will come back here now to discuss security, network security improper, because of the situation we have right now. A lot of people are working remotely. You need to access your corporate network. You need to also secure those networks. Like I said, for web proxy, don't just enable services on your network without protecting them or knowing the consequences of enabling that service. Thank you so much for listening. I would like to welcome Emmanuel Onowojo as he continues with the security aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dele, and everyone for still being with us. It's almost 1 hour now, and I feel we should talk about security. During this period, many persons have complained receiving emails. Some of them have said they can't work from home because of hackers, but COVID-19 has forced most of us to work remotely from home. So in this presentation, we're going to be talking about tips that can actually help us to work safely, remotely, from anywhere in the world. And we have about 12 of those techniques that we're going to be discussing here. The first one is we want to use strong password, we want to use two-factor authentication, use VPN, set up firewall, use antivirus, use secure our home routers, install update. And when we mean update, we mean Windows update and updating the softwares that we use. Then do backup of our system. Then we want to also be aware of what kind of remote desktop tool, if we need to connect back to our office, what kind of remote desktop tool are we going to use? Then some of us share apartments, and we may decide to turn our sitting room or the living area to a work area where we work from. So when you are leaving your system, we want to make sure that the system is locked. We want to make sure also that the connection between you, that is your own computer, and your office is encrypted. Then we want to watch out for phishing emails and sites that try to mimic real sites. So these are some of the things we're going to be discussing in detail. The first one I want to talk about here is using a strong password and set up two-factor authentication. So it's always encouraged that, look, if you must set password, your password should be minimum 8 characters, and your password should as well be alphanumeric, that is numbers and letters, then special characters. And you want to also have a mix of lowercase and uppercase. Then we could say you have a strong password. One, it must be a minimum of 8 characters. it must have special characters, and it must be alphanumeric. Then when we talk about two-factor authentication, what do we mean? Two-factor authentication simply means that when you log in with your password, you still need to put a token or a code before it will grant you access. If almost all of us have been to the bank, you see that when the bankers want to do something, they ask you for your account number or your account details, they put it in, they ask you what you want to do. Then before you can get access to your data on their platform, most of them wear this thing on their neck called token. They will press the token, and when they press the token is going to give them a code. That is what we mean by two-factor authentication. So if a hacker actually get the password of the banker, he's not going to be able to do anything because one, he doesn't have the token. Some organizations have two-factor authentication. Even our Gmail do have two-factor authentication. So you can actually set up a two-factor authentication on your Gmail so that anytime you attempt to log into your Gmail will send a code either to your phone, or sometimes you can even get a token that you tie to your Gmail account, and you generate a code and put it in, then you'll be able to get in. Because most persons what I'll find out over this period is that they use same password across all platforms. And at the end of the day, if one password is compromised, then everything is compromised. The hacker can use that single password and that username to log on to everything that the person owns. So we want to enable two-factor authentication. With this, then we could say, yes, you have a strong password, you enable two-factor authentication, then to some extent, you can work safely from anywhere in the world. Another thing that can help us to work safely remotely is the use of VPN and firewall. What VPN simply does is create a tunnel between your own computer and the gateway or the VPN server in your office, so that anything that is passing through is actually passing through the tunnel. So even though it's crossing across the internet, the hackers out there or those on the internet do not have to get to see the communication between you and your corporate network. This will keep it away from the prying eyes of any snoopers who will want to be spying on you. So VPN encrypt this packet across the public internet, and this can help us to prevent malicious program from entering and stopping or leaking our data from our own device. So when we have firewall will be like a barrier. If software wants to come in, it check that software, because sometimes when you're browsing, you will see some softwares, you just click here to download this software to help you to do this. If you attempt that, you see that if you have good internet firewall, it's going to block that software from working as well. Then two, you will see that sometimes when you attempt to visit some website, it will tell you that this website is not safe. It's going to as well block it. So we must have firewall installed, enabled on our operating system so that we can feel secure by working remotely. When sometimes we feel that, why would I want to pay for some of these tools? Why would I pay for antivirus when there is one that I can download free? You can use P2P software, BitTorrent, to download and install it. The truth is that you don't know who put it out there. You don't know what he may have compiled along with it. Some of those things may just be free, but they will be used to spy on us. So we want to make sure that we use a good and a trusted antivirus that updates regularly, and at the same time too, from a genuine source, not one that we don't know the source that can spy on us. Then we also seen that most persons, they don't prefer to use their phone for doing hotspot. So what they simply do is to get a MiFi or a router, which they put a SIM card, on their network, so that they will be able to connect their system to it using Wi-Fi. And most persons leave this at the default, the username admin, password admin, then no encryption. So your neighbor can actually hook up to your wireless network, log on to your own router, and even log you out or may divert the traffic and use his own computer as the gateway and be spying on you. So when you buy a MiFi, a router that you're using to work from home, you want to make sure that you secure them. One, make sure you change the default password, and not just, as we said, the password should be alphanumeric, minimum of 8 characters if possible. Then some of these firewalls have what we call inbound and outbound traffic. We want to restrict, especially inbound traffic, that is traffic coming from the internet, people accessing the router configuration page from the internet. We want to make sure that we enable that. By default, some of them are blocked, but some persons will leave it open. When you leave it open, you are simply exposing yourself to hackers. And you don't want to use a web encryption key, because a good hacker, it doesn't take him more than 5 minutes. He just installs tools on his laptop and he'll be able to hack what the encryption key is. So you want to use WPA2 or WPA3. Never use WPX. That is, you try to connect, you press a button on your router and automatically you connect to the router. Don't do that. If you do that, you are simply exposing yourself to hackers. If there's any hacker around you, it can easily hack you up. Then the next thing we want to also do is to make sure that our system, from time to time, we let it download update, because some of those updates are for security purpose, to secure our operating system, secure our connection. I know most persons will say, no, when you download Windows update, it makes your Windows slow. So they don't. And you see, earlier, Malam Tata have told us how we can update our Linux system. Just 2 commands, sudo apt-get update, and our update are installed. But on Windows, you can go to the control panel, and from there you update your Windows as well. Then when we talk about backup, some persons, they will have create partition on their own computer. They will have drive C, they have drive D and drive E, and they say, oh, all the documents in my drive C, I've copied them into drive D. What if you are hacked and the hacker encrypted everything on your hard drive? Both those documents that you kept on drive D and drive C, the truth is that they will all be encrypted. I've seen persons who said they have a project work they kept on their system, they were downloading something on the internet, and it didn't tell them to restart. Immediately they restart. Any document that they click on, what will happen is that it's telling them that they should contact, I can't remember the exact name, they put their number there and they were asking for ransom so that they would give them a key to open their own document. And unfortunately for her, she doesn't have any backup anywhere. And at the end of the day, she has to start her project all afresh again. So we want to keep a backup and not save the backup on our own system. When you save a backup, when you have a backup, simply take the backup away from your system so that if anything happens to the data on your own computer, you have somewhere you can retrieve them from. At the same time, too, hardware could as well fail. A hard drive could fail. When you fail, what happened? So we want to keep our data safe from hardware failure, from cyber attack, and ransomware. Then we want to look out for phishing email. You will see email coming from these days. It will claim to come from your bank, telling you to click here. And when you look at the URL, the address bar, you will see that it's a little different. I could see, I noticed, I got that kind of email some time back. They claim the part that road bank, instead of B, they put 3. If you are not very observant, almost everything looks the same. When you click on such link, you'd see that we're going to be exposing ourselves to those things. And those emails in this era of COVID-19, we see that the rate at which people receive those mails have increased. So we want to be very careful about the link we click when we open our emails. Not every link you should click. Then 2, if your corporation, your organization have their own email, it is advisable we use the email that our organization have provided. We don't want to use open email, because some of those open email, they are much more easy, because your organization will make sure that they do all the necessary things they have to do in order to secure their mail server. Then if you have to work in a public space, and you live with people, you want to be very careful. So like for instance, now I'm in a public office and I want to step out to go and ease myself or to go and get food. It's better immediately I'm stepping out. If you're using a window operating system, you just press window L.
I mean, we're in real time.
Yeah.
Pause, come back. Disable IP.
Hello, Mr. Dele? Mr. Dele? Yeah, so it is good for us to, hello? Yeah, so it is good for us to lock our system. When we come back, it doesn't take time. It's our password. We can always key it in. So these are some of the things we want to do in order to protect ourselves from hackers. Then we want to be aware of remote desktop. The truth is that when you go to free remote desktop tools, you will see a whole lot of them out there. You want to make sure that the one you use is one that you trust. By default, Windows have its own remote desktop, RODP, which comes with Windows by default. And it's better we use something we trust than just using something very fanciful, but at the end of the day, it could be a tool that is used in spying or else taking our user credential. Say, for instance, you're working for an organization and you need to log on to the servers back in the office, you're using remote desktop, and you install one of these remote desktop applications. You've used it to log in your user credentials, everything is there. Then, if it were to be a hacker who placed it there, your username and your password is gone. He knows the URL or the IP address of the server you have to log on to. That means from his home, he can log on to it, do anything he does, the organization is going to hold you responsible. Why? Because it is your username and your password. So again, if you have two-factor authentication, that can protect you. If you use an approved remote desktop, you'll be able to as well protect yourself. So these are some of the ways we can actually protect ourselves. Then we talked about VPN earlier on. So this time we're going to look at how can we implement VPN if we must work remotely as network administrators. So we know that most persons either use MikroTik or Cisco. So we're going to look at how we can implement a remote VPN server using MikroTik and how we can implement it using the Cisco ASA. To implement a remote VPN server on MikroTik is very simple. One, MikroTik is basically three protocols when it comes to VPN. Either it's a PPTP or L2PT, or the IPsec, which is much more secure. And as we all know, VPN work across the internet. That means you can connect from anywhere you are that has internet connection. Then you need to connect, remote users can connect from anywhere to their office using either the dial-up system or using other software. So this is a typical example of what we're talking about. This is the company corporate network. Then they have a MikroTik that is pointing to the internet. Then this user can be somewhere, say he's in Abuja, this one is in Lagos, this one is in Benin. At the end of the day, they can all connect to the office and work as if they are actually in their office across the internet. So how do we do it? A quick one. There are just 7 steps if you must do this on MikroTik. The first step is you have to create a pool, then create a profile, create the user credential that the users are going to use to log on, then create the type of tunnel the encryption through IPsec, which is much more secure, then set up firewall so that those who are logging in remotely, what they should be able to access. For instance, those who are in finance should only access the server that concerns finance. Then those who are in human resources should only be able to connect to the server. So these are things we can as well do from the firewall. And we can route the VPN traffic to where we want them to on our router. So how do we create the user pool that we talked about? Again, very simple. On MikroTik, so long as you have Winbox, all you just need to do is click on IP pool, you click on the green plugs, then you specify the name you want to call it. In this instance, we've called it VPN pool. Then we state the IP address, the range, this one we have 172.18.99.1 to 172.1899.200. So you can just set it, okay, not more than 200 persons will be able to work. Once you create the pool, the next thing you have to do is to create the connection profile. And how do you do it? You go to PPP, then you click on the profile.
This one is for who?
You click on profile.
Hello? No?
It's for IT. You click on profile, then from profile you put the name of the profile, then the local IP address, you set the any IP address of your choice as the local IP address that will act as gateway. Then remote address, which IP address will remote user be picking? In this instance, remember you've created the pool you want them to be picking from, so you can just go to click on the drop down and select from the pool that you want to use. You may have some other pool existing in your MikroTik, but you want to use the one that you have set for your VPN. Then under PPP again, you will see secrets. You can just click on secret. If your organization have a radio server or domain controller, you may want to click on PPP authentication and set up the IP address of the radio server, so that any username that comes, the MikroTik will send it to the AD or to the radio server to authenticate. Or you can as well create the username each person here. What kind of service? You can select the service, what profile will where will the person pick IP address from. If it is VPN pool, then the local address, you set the local address and you click OK. With that, very simple, in less than a minute, you've created the profile. Then IPsec, you want to make sure that the connection between you and your office is a very secure one. IPsec is one of the most secure means of connecting remotely. So you, under PPP, you click on the pair and make sure you set triple depth, that is encrypt it 3 times. That's what triple depth means. So you may want to script triple depth, then AES, want to how many bits will it use to encrypt it? So these are things you could do. So you don't want to leave it without encryption. Then what ports will people be using to connect in? So you can decide to set up a port that the VPN should be using. You can customize it so that when users are connecting from their home to the office, on their connection profile, they may have specified that particular port and the public IP address of the MikroTik. And as they come in with that port, so long as the port match, the IP match, they have the user credential, they will be able to gain access to the remote network and be able to work as if they are in the office. So that is how you just do it on MikroTik. Simple step and it's up. The next thing you have to do is that if you don't have money to buy software for remote VPN, on Windows by default come with a remote VPN. If you just click on connection, you can come to set up connection, come to new connection. You will see that there is a mark there that says connect to my workplace. Once you click that, you're actually setting up a VPN tunnel. You click on next, then it's going to ask you what is the IP address of the name of it's going to ask you for the name of the connection, then the IP address, you put in the IP address. If you change it from the default port that VPN use, you may have to also specify the port in front of the IP address. You put in your credentials and it creates a connection between you and the office. So these are, you see it. If the office said, oh, you have to do a pre-shared keys, you can as well go and edit that connection and go and use a pre-shared key. These are ways of making it much more secure for all of us so that we can work remotely. I know some of you will be saying that, but I'm not a Cisco expert. It's only the Cisco expert that will be able to configure Cisco ASA. The truth is that setting remote VPN up in Cisco is very easy. Cisco has a tool they use for configuring it on their ASA called ASDM. And with ASDM, you just need to go to log on with your ASDM. As you log on to the ASDM, you click on the connection wizard, then you select a remote VPN, then you click on next. And as you click on next, this is what you're going to see. So just click on the wizard, you click on the VPN wizard, any Connect VPN wizard. Then you click on next, you just follow the instruction. It will ask you the connection profile. You put what you want to use as the connection profile. Then what protocol are you going to use? Is it SSL or IPsec? Remember, we said IPsec is much more secure. Not that SSL is not secure, so it all depends on what you want to use. You select that and you click on next. Then there is a software Cisco use called Cisco Init Connect. You can actually upload it into the Cisco ASA so that user back home can as well download it from there without looking for, oh, where will I get the software to connect to this network? So when it comes to that place, if you have the software, you just go browse, pick the software, you upload it into your Cisco ASA, and it's there for your end user to be able to download and install and then connect to your remote network. So this is how you do it. You see here, is asking you to browse. You just simply browse and pick the Cisco Init Connect. Then if you are using a Mac operating system, you also need to upload the Mac so that those users for Mac can as well see it as well to download for their system to be able to connect to the network remotely. Then the next thing is you create your own IP pool. Those who are going to be connecting from home, what IP address will they be getting? So you specify the name of the pool, you specify the starting IP address and the end IP address. What is the subnet mask? Those are things you just need to set. Once you set this, the next thing is you click on next again. And if you require DNS, you have to put your DNS because some corporations have their own private DNS. This DNS will help them to use them to be able to access their local servers. So you must set up your own DNS as well so that connection passing through the remote VPN will be able to use that. Then remember, don't forget to click on a NAT exempt so that those connections coming remotely, those IP addresses will be exempted from network address translation as well because they want to connect to local resources and it's just an extension of your network, so you don't have to NAT them. At the end of the day, it's going to present you with a summary page. You look through the summary page and ask yourself, okay, are all the connections fine? If they are not fine, go back and edit it. But if everything is fine, you just click on finish. As you click on finish, the next thing it's going to do is that he's going to send the configuration into your ASA. And once you send it to your ASA, you'll be fine. But if for peradventure, there is something you didn't do well, you can actually go back and edit it. How do you edit it? You click on configuration, you will see remote access VPN, then you see the connection profile. If it is connection profile you want to edit, if it is the form of encryption, so you have to go and do all that. All you just need is send the ASA public IP address to the end users. They put it on their web browser. It asks them for their credentials and ASA as well, just as we talked about Cisco. You can actually create the username locally or the username can be on their AD. So you can also configure that on it so that it will be able to send them to your AD for authentications. Then they will be able to download it, install the software, they then put the IP address of the remote VPN server, which happen to be the Cisco ASA. They put in their username and password. Then they connect to the network, and immediately they connect to the network. So these are they want to connect to the network. Any connect is going to prompt them because you don't have a trusted certificate that you install and send to your user. It's going to tell you that this is an untrusted server. Do you want to block it? Tell them that you just have to tick that, yes, you trust it, it should continue. So once you click continue, it will allow them to connect to the network with just the certificate that is locally generated on your ASA, and you have a connection into your network. Then, if you have any local resources, you'll be able to ping it, excuse me, sorry. So you'll be able to ping it, connect to your devices easily. Isn't it simple to use ASDM? I love using it because it makes your work really easy and you can all see even the code. Then you can edit the code, modify them. So it's not rocket science, it's something we could all do. Thank you very much. At this point, we will be welcoming a question from users. I know some of you may have a lot of questions that you want to ask us. We'll do our best to answer the ones we can. The ones we can't answer now, don't worry, we will still get it via mail from us as well. So Mr. Malam Tata will be handling the question and answer section. Over to you, Malam Tata. So question is Mr. Dele? Mr. Dele?
So sorry, I forgot to unmute my mic. Sorry, I'm here. So thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. That was a very wonderful presentation. We have a couple of questions in the chat box. I think we'll first of all take that. Then we now look at whether we have participants that have raised up their hands when we want to ask their questions verbally, actually. So let's start from the first question. There are a couple of questions actually that were more of how people could get a copy of the slides. This will be made available. The recording is already, we've recorded this session and it's going to be made available to everybody. There's another question from one Mr. Kabir Adeyemi Aziz, and he was asking whether ngTop is a penetration tester on Linux. Okay, I think that question is for me. ngTop is, we won't call it a penetration tester, rather it is just a network visualizer, it's a network monitor. It just gives you a visual image of what is actually happening on the network. So you don't use it for testing how secured your network is. So it's not a penetration tester. That's that. And there's another question from Lance A. Hodder to Lance A. Hodder, I believe. Pardon me, please, if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. It says, I'm of the assumption ngTop is a network sniffer tool. If we are on a totally switched domain, sorry, I'm trying to get this out. Good. If we are on a totally switched domain and ports are not configured as promiscuous, how do we sniff from another port, or is the server at the edge of the network? ngTop is not, well, you see, Wireshark is a sniffer tool, but ngTop is not a sniffer tool per se. It's basically just look at what is happening on the network. So like it's like you need to remember that no matter what traffic you are sending, you're still broadcasting, no matter what traffic you're sending. So like once the traffic is going on to the network, ngTop can actually pick that particular traffic up, and it gives you a graphical display of what that traffic is all about. So you notice that it's not actually going in to check exactly what you are actually doing on the network, sending on the network, like a lot of sniffer tools will do. Rather, it just tells you how much resources you're actually using on the network in terms of bandwidth and what protocols you're using, where you're sending traffic to, and what have you. So that's basically what ngTop is all about, ngTop engine. Now it says, another question again from the same last A Hodder, says, is it possible to change the default port number? Yes, of course, it's possible to change the default port number. Remember, during my presentation, I said you can do that via the terminal window when you use an editor to actually configure the ngTop configuration file. So when you go in there, you will see where it specifies the port number at 3000. So you can actually change it to whatever port number you want. So it says again, what is the difference between Wireshark and ngTop? Okay, Wireshark is a sniffer tool, ngTop is a monitoring tool. So these are all the questions that we have available. And the next one is, let's look at now there's a question for, I believe, for Emmanuel here. It says, The IPsec VPN protocol, why is RSA encryption algorithm not used? Mr. Emmanuel, if you can hear that. The IPsec VPN protocols, why is RSA encryption algorithm not used? Hello, Emmanuel. So if Emmanuel is not able to answer the question, I believe that. Hello, Emmanuel. Hello, Emmanuel. So let's move to other questions. I believe if he's back, we should be able to answer those questions. I have here also, let's see, do you have to attend subsequent webinars? Somebody here is saying, it says here, this is a question for Mr. Daly. It said, did your presentation cover organizations that have...
Remember, I was on that.
This was the...
Just mute everyone, Mr. Tata. Can mute all.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I have a lot of windows open, so trying to like, let's see, mute all. Sorry. So I believe everyone has muted. Good. Now, it says here, Mr. Daly, did your presentation cover organizations that have multiple links, link bonding, failover, or load sharing? Mr. Daly, available to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Tata. Tata, please, can you take that question again?
It says, did your presentation cover organizations that have multiple
WAN connections?
Multiple WAN connections, exactly.
No, the presentation didn't cover that. But with your MikroTik, with your fat pipe, you actually can achieve that seamlessly without any stress. If MikroTik is what you have in your network, you can easily deploy ECMP or you deploy PCC to do load balancing across it. And if you want to do policy-based routing, you actually can still use Mango to achieve that. You can mark routing, and for example, if you have one link that is 50 meg and the backup link is just 5 meg, you sure won't need to do load balancing over that kind of link. You probably want to keep one as a backup, but while it is acting as a backup, instead of making it redundant, you can actually push a small section of your traffic to it by doing policy-based routing, using Mango with routing max to send specific traffic through that very small capacity WAN connection, and you leave the main link as the link. So the small capacity is only used by everybody when the main link is down. You actually can set up your MikroTik to achieve that. Time will fail me from just logging into a box to show that here right now on how to basically get that done. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Daly. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Olakomi Adewara. Thank you. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we have. And we have a lot of people that are showing appreciation for the webinar. A lot of them, I think I can see Professor Olumide Longe from AUN, a professor, a very nice professor I know. I can see Mrs. Mary Uduma. She's also here with us. We really appreciate your coming. I see a lot of people, Mr. Hussein Hamza, Osaibowo Ehige, all of these are, please, if I miss your name, please don't blame me. I have Dr. Bobga Danjuma. We have Mr. Buhari Badamasi. All of these, please, we appreciate your attendance and we are happy that you are here with us. We hope we have actually educated or at least informed you of ways to actually optimize your bandwidth and also secure that particular bandwidth that we have. Thank you very much for being here with us. I don't know whether Secretariat has something to say before we close.
Um, I think I can see two hands. One is Al Hassan Tijani,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then Clayton Okoli.
Oh, okay. So, Clayton Okoli, you have the field. Unmute your mic.
Okay, thank you very much, the ngNOG team, for the beautiful presentation. I think part of the question that I heard someone asked about the end top. You know, if you remember during the presentation of Daily, so what he was basically trying to say is, for you to optimize your bandwidth, it doesn't just end in putting bandwidth optimizers all around the network, depending on the device you need. You basically need to understand the pattern of the traffic on your network. So when you're optimizing, you basically know what you're basically trying to
Hello, Cletus.
Looks like we lost Clayton.
Yeah, I think we lost Cletus. I'm trying to get the second person. Oh, okay, he's back. He's back.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me, Tata?
Yeah, we lost you for a moment.
Oh, sorry. So
maybe you need to repeat that again. Yes, sorry.
Okay, so I was basically adding to your response on the NTOP NG that aside the fact that you're trying to optimize your network, you basically also need to know what informs that decision. So NTOP NG is going to tell you the traffic pattern. So who are the top talkers? So what exactly are you trying to place your network on? So that allows you to know what's happening on network. So when you're optimizing, you know what basically you're doing. And then also, in addition, the part Imad took on, hello, are you still with me?
Yeah, we
okay. Yeah. So the part Imad tried to take on the different ways you can control. I mean, I've benefited a lot about those 10, 12 different things I need to do. Because we found out that after listening to this, I had to go to my Twitter and all those things and turned off all the things that are consuming my bandwidth. So thank you guys. I think I've actually benefited a lot. I'm already running on top of one of my devices because I lost it. But with this now, I've reactivated it. So kudos to you guys and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clayton Okoli. Okay, but let me see the other two hands that were raised. Are they still available? Let's see.
Yes, they are. Tijani and
okay. Tijani, Madam Tijani, you have the floor if you can hear us. Hello, Tijani. Hello. Okay, if Tijani is not available, Mr. DM, you can go ahead. Mr. DM, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Tijani, go ahead. That's some Babajo Tijani. But you have a background, there's so much background noise. Hello, Mr. Tijani, you have a lot of background noise. Please, Secretary, can you help me mute that for whoever it is? Thank you very much. So, Mr. Tijani, you can go ahead. Let me unmute you now. Hello, Mr. Tijani, unmute yourself. Hello, Mr. Tijani.
It seems he's not available right now.
No, yes, I've just seen him on mute.
Okay.
He's not saying anything. Okay, then Mr. Kabir Adeyemi Aziz, you have your hands raised as well. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kabir.
Yeah. I'm very grateful of the lecture so far. And to Mr. Adeli, sorry, is he there?
Yeah,
Mr. Dele,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
Mr.
here.
Dele,
I'm here.
he
Yes,
said,
I'm here.
Okay, thank God for everything. Although I learned a lot on the microtic aspect. And sorry, I want to ask a question on the simple queue, the queue you talked about.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Just give me a minute to talk.
Wow. Audio quality.
Mr. Adeyemi, we are not hearing you. Your audio quality is actually very poor. Maybe you can send your question on a chat so that we can take it on the chat.
Madam Tata, I'm also seeing a question. I don't know if we responded to it.
Which one is that?
From Osia Bovo. I'm sorry if I didn't get the name right. Are there migrotic training materials or it's essential to go for a training school?
Okay. Emmanuel. Hello, Emmanuel.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, Tata.
Please, can you answer this question? Are there microtic training materials or it's essentials to go for a training? I mean, it's essential to go for a training school. Or can you get the materials or you have to go to a training school?
Well,
Sorry, can I
you
just
see
quickly
some
respond?
online on YouTube, and okay.
Go on, Nima.
Yeah, you could see some online on YouTube, and I quickly have a wiki page where you can see some of their how-to. And two, they have certified training partners across Nigeria. You can just pick any one of them because there's nothing like hands-on, and most of those trainers as well, they do hands-on, so you could do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. Mr. Dele, I thought you probably wanted to say something as well.
That was exactly what I wanted to say. There are lots of video materials online on YouTube. There are lots of video materials on the Microtik Mom website. So you actually you just need to be ready to create time to watch those things and study those things carefully. And you discover that you actually can get a lot done. And if you're the type that would like a little push, that means you have to attend the training class. But if you can just push yourself very hard and very well, then you actually can get everything online and be able to implement whatsoever you decide to implement on your network. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Daly. I think that's pretty much those number of questions. There was a particular comment by Mr. Olajide Olapade, where he says some firewall devices can also be used to optimize network performance. I have used Sophos XD and Sophos Central for network optimization. And I believe Mr. Bamidele Amiri.
Yeah, I actually mentioned that during my presentation. There are lots of them out there. Most firewall devices that you get out there, in fact, most routers, but you just might need to do a little more in some of them. But I know Sophos generally has a lot to offer in terms of network optimization. I just decided to pick Microtik because I know a lot of people have it in very small, very big, relatively a lot of people just put it on some old hardware. So it costs them very little or nothing to put it in network. So for very small networks and large networks, you get them using Microtik in various perspectives at different levels. And that was why I just decided to show how Microtik implements it. But I did mention that a lot of routers out there that we can actually use for optimization. There are even some unknown, unnamed devices. You get some open devices that are running on MIT license or running on open source based stuff that you can actually use very well. I did mention that if you decide to go the open source way, be very sure that the community, it has a large community based support. That means you're getting updates and support for it. It's not enough to just get an open source application and put on your network. If it does not come with the right support, it might become a trouble to your network over time. So I actually mentioned that. So you're good to go if you have Sophos on your network. You don't need to change what you have. You just need to make the most of it. I think I should end on that note. Just make the most of whatever you have on your network identify what you need to block or what you need to throttle down, and then do the needful on those connections from time to time. By the way, optimization is not one thing you do once and you leave. If the pattern of usage on your network changes, that means you also need to constantly monitor changes and what is happening on your network for you to improve whatsoever script or whatsoever config you have on your optimizer or whatever device you have at the edge of your network, sitting between your network and your WAN connection. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daly. And there's a quick one that just came up. It says, what's the best stroke affordable method to limit social media traffic on a campus network? The cyber room annual license seems to be expensive. I believe that goes to Mr. Daly as well.
When you say cyber roam license is expensive, I think it's relative. I know a lot of people who will use any other thing apart from cyber roam on their network. I know people who use any other thing apart from, somebody just mentioned Sophos SG now and Sophos Central. But then if you're thinking about what to use that it will cost you nothing, that means you have to go in the direction of the open source. And I just mentioned that you need to be careful when you go in that direction. Be sure you know all the loopholes, all the open ports on it before you put it in. MikroTik comes in cheap, but then you have to do a lot more. With CyberRoam, you click and just put in things and you apply. But with MikroTik, you need to understand how to define what you want to control and how to put it in. So you need to be ready to do some basic work yourself. You can easily migrate to MikroTik and you'll get the job done for you. And on a general note, I heard a lot of people saying things like, how can I block web pages on my network? One of the easiest way to block websites on your network these days is to use DNS. Pi-hole DNS comes in as an open source thing. So if you are trying to block specific applications and pages on your network, use DNS. Even if you are using MikroTik, use DNS. Force every traffic to your DNS server that is running on your MikroTik and add a fake entry into the DNS of your MikroTik. So when people are directed to use the DNS on the MikroTik and they're trying to resolve those names, they won't be able to resolve it. And then the pages won't open on the network. That's one of the easiest way of blocking web pages on network. If you don't have MikroTik on your network, create a Pi-hole DNS server on your network. The application is very small and you can block anything you want to block and control it based on time and anything you want to do on your network. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Mr. Daly. I believe if we continue taking questions, we won't close because we are way beyond our 2-hour session that we said we were going to do. But then, of course, remember we already have a mailing list that we can actually continue this conversation on. The link to the mailing list is already posted on the chat. You can go onto the chat and see mailing list if you're not a member of the mailing list, so that you can actually join up and continue this discussion. At this juncture, I would like to thank everybody, the panelists, the participants, and the presenters. We've all done a very wonderful job, and thank you very much. Our audience, without you, we wouldn't be here, and we appreciate your being here with us for over 2 hours, actually, and we hope that next time when we call on you, you also come on with us. Our ngNOG Secretary might want to talk about maybe 1 minute, tell us about when the ngNOG session is going to take place so that people could know, will get informed about ngNOG that's going to come up proper. Hello, Secretariat.
Hello, Madam Tata.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity and thanks to all the participants and presenters. The next ngNOG webinar is going to take place on the 28th and 29th of October. So we'll send out the announcement soon. I've shared the link to the mailing list on the chat. If you're not a part of the mailing list, please join because most of our announcements will go through there. So you'd receive the invitation to attend the event. It's going to be a 2-day event and it's going to be quite engaging. So we look forward to having you participate. And then we'd also appreciate you sharing the information about ngNOG to your colleagues and other networks. Once again, thank you for participating. I don't know if Dr. Wally has something to add.
Thank you, Rashida. I don't have anything to add. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, participants. Thank you, panelists. I'm very glad to have you again and see you in October. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone, enjoy the rest part of your day.
Again for the engine of workshops for 2019.